Chapter 14. The Festival of Light. As daylight crept through the trees on the horizon of Mount Alta, a hint of pink whisked across the sky. There was no wind, just stillness. Not even a bird was flying looking for its morning meal, nor a rabbit scurrying among the bushes searching for food. A whisper of eeriness hung in the air. Down in the city, people were already beginning to prepare for the festivities of the day. Wagons filled with their goods were pulled by textrons, who were also decorated with flowers and bells for the occasion. Some booths were already set up. Food vendors were ready for early customers. The smell of baked bread, sweet cakes, and the preparation of spicy sauces permeated the air. Craftsmen of all kinds erected their booths for their pottery, carvings, sculptures, jewelry, and clothing. People smiled and waved a greeting as they passed by their fellow merchants. Curious children ran from booth to booth, looking for a toy to perhaps a sweet to eat. The streets had been decorated the night before by things with decorative lights and flowers lining the streets. The Festival of Light was a celebration of old. It was in honor of the day when the earth first received light, which in turn created life. In the early days, it was more a religious holiday. The day was spent in reverent meditation and prayer with a feast in the evening. Now only those of the ones still continued the tradition. It now had become a commercial venture for the merchants of ATLATIA. Instead of prayer, it had become more fashionable to celebrate openly with intoxicating beverages. On the other side of Alta loomed the awesome airship, pointing up towards its target. It was a massive ship that stood about 8 stories high. The ATLATIan flag decorated the hull of the ship as well as the platform on which it was anchored. Near the airship stood another cardinal spectacle, a domed building which housed the great fire crystal. Both of these were to play a very important role in the day's activities. This was the day when the launch would take place. In the Hall of Records, Oren and I worked diligently. Our time ticked away. We worked as fast as we could, but it seemed there was still so much to do. Both of us were scared. We knew that this day would change our world one way or another. We had come to the conclusion that the expeditions weren't coming back in time. Now our only hope was to escape the predicted disaster with as many of the records completed as possible. Those remaining of the Law of One had prepared a water ship, which was capable of functioning by the use of fossil fuels and also sails for wind propulsion. The ship was scheduled to leave that afternoon before the launch. Others had left days before, fearing the imminent disaster. Oren had wished that Ituitude had not gone to the lab that day. He knew that she would do something to try and prevent the launch. He didn't know what she would do, but in his heart he knew it would be dangerous. I could see that my friend was troubled. "What is it? Ituitude?" "Yes," he sat staring blankly at his computer screen. "I know she's going to try to stop the launch, and I'm frightened for her. I want to go there and protect her, but I can't. She could resent me trying to stop her. Plus, I have all this work to do." Suddenly, I was aware of Rotog standing in the door. I could see by his expression on his face that he had heard what Warren said. Instinctively, I ran and grabbed him before he could get more than 3 feet from the door. I clocked him hard on the head, knocking him down. Luckily, there weren't many people around because of the festival and the launch. I grabbed him by the shoulders and pulled him back into the cubicle. Oren stood there looking at me with fear all over his face. "Did you see Helig with him?" Oren asked. "No, I think he was alone." "Go back to work. I'll take care of him and then go check on Ituitude. You need to continue working until the last moment." Oren nodded, took one last glance at Rotog, and sat down to return to his work. I found some wiring in a storage bin and wrapped Rotog's hands and feet. I ripped the bottom of my robe for a gag for his mouth. I had no idea what we would do with him. He had to remain here at least until we were safely away. When Rotog was safely stashed behind some crates of scrolls, I walked to Oren's chair and put my hand on his shoulder. "Don't think about him or worry about Ituitude. I promise. I will keep her safe and bring her back, so we can all depart together. I told Miram we would stop and get her on the way to the ship." He stood and gave me a hug. Worry painted his face. "Thanks, my friend." I hurried out the door, praying Ituitude was safe. I never believed Patelin would think her not a threat to his business when she had been so vocal at the meeting. The energy was high in the lab. This was the big day for Patelin, and he was anxious as anyone. Patelin, Helm, and Amaziah sat glued to their consoles when Ituitu had entered the room. "All in order here," Helm reported. "All in order here," Amaziah followed in turn. Patelin smiled. The time was near, and all looked well. He noticed Ituitu and said sarcastically, "Did you bring your space brothers here to watch today?" She ignored his remark and sat at her console. Helm and Amaziah laughed snidely at her. Patelin turned to Helm and Amaziah. "Looks like all in his order. Now we must wait for the ceremony." Patelin was dressed for what he felt would be his honorific occasion. He wore a garb of silken brocade that was accessorized with bands of gold and jewels on his arms. He was dressed more like a king than a scientist. He walked up to Ituitu and took her hand from her console. "Why don't you take the day to enjoy the festivities?" His chilling smile brought her blood to boil. She quickly jerked her hand out of his. "I see nothing to be festive about." You could hear the hostility in her tone. Patelin would not let her spoil this day. What a shame. It shall be a grand celebration, for this shall be a day to go down in history. I hope your husband is documenting this for the eternity. This will definitely be a day people will remember, she vehemently spouted at him. Patelin scowled at her, knowing her true meaning of the statement. A boy of 13 entered the lab. He called out for Patelin. "Patelin, the ceremonies waits for you at the dock." Patelin gestured to his cronies, Helm and Amaziah. They followed him out of the lab. Helm made sure to give her a sneer before leaving the room. She waited a moment, making sure they had left. Quickly, she got up and went to the computer, where Helm had sat, and pressed buttons until the picture of the airship appeared. Her fingers ordered instructions to the computer to override all other instructions and to destruct. Before she could execute her orders to the computer, 2 arms grabbed her from behind, preventing her from completing her mission. It was Helm. "Patelin insists that you come to the ceremony." As I walked down the street towards the lab, I sensed more and more an urgency to get to Ituitu. I could not tell whether it was the music and the dancing people around me, or if I really knew something was wrong. I began to run through the crowded streets. People were laughing and singing around me, but I felt as though a cloud had just hung over me. As I got closer, I could see the ceremonies on the loading dock of the aircraft near the site of where the great ship would be launched. King Atlan and his wife Selena stood on a tall platform. Both of them glittered in the speckles of light that crept through the clouds. The flags of Alta and ATLATIA hardly fluttered behind them. They were surrounded by dignitaries, all expectant of the launch. To the right of the stage, I could see Patelin working his way to the platform, acting as if he were king instead of Atlan, waving and shaking everyone's hands as he worked his way to King Atlan's side. King Atlan opened the ceremonies. "Welcome, Atlatians, to the Festival of Light." It appeared as if all of Alta was there for the special event. In front of the king were thousands and thousands of people. They cheered and threw flowers in the air. "To mark this illustrious occasion, we shall send our first airship into the outer limits of our world." People cheered again. As I ran past the ceremonies, I could see Patelin smiling next to King Atlan, as he applauded for his contribution to the project. When I got to the perimeter of the lab facilities, I looked back to see and hear King Atlan toasting the occasion. "To the launch!" The crowd followed, shouting, "To the launch!" Cheers continued as I tried to get to the lab. A guard, one of the sons of Belial, blocked my way. "You are forbidden here." "I'm looking for a scientist," he tuitued. I tried peering past the guard into the open door. "If she is inside, you cannot see her. This area is off limits to anyone unless authorized by Patelin himself." It appeared to me that Patelin had suspected there might be some trouble. But what about Ituitu? He must suspect her. I conceded to the guard and casually walked away. When he looked in the other direction from where the noise of the crowd was coming, I sneaked around to the back of the building. I found an unguarded window and jumped inside. It was a storage room. Cautiously, I inched through the room, closer to the door that led to the hallway. I could see that the hall was a room which was possibly being used for security around the airship. There were 8 different monitors of various angles of the airship. Seated before them was another guard. Carefully, I peered through the door and over the guard's shoulder. I was just about to sneak into the hallway to find Ituitu when on one of the discs appeared Helm, ushering Ituitu towards the craft. It was not more than a moment when he returned without her. I had seen fear on her face. I knew that she was in danger. Quickly I ran through the storage room and jumped out the window. Quetzal and Ronan watched the monitors of Terra's changes. She was erupting at an increasing rate from within and without. Tidal waves arched up in massive strides. Earthquakes were not minor trembles, but gargantuan tremors, swallowing all in its way. The landscapes were changing dramatically. Mountains crumbled and burned with the volcanic eruptions. The city of Alta was nonplussed by what was happening elsewhere. The city was full of celebration. Those of the Law of One, however, hustled with their friends and families to the great water ship that would take them away. Quetzal beamed down to Miram. You must depart now. It's only a matter of time before Pisidia is no more. Miram understood. We have transported many of your people aboard our ships, but time is running out. Quickly, Miram ran through the temple and found her trusty assistant Sigund packing his bags in his room. Please, you must go to the Hall of Records and bring back Oran, Esser, and Ituitud. We must leave at once. When I reached the platform of the scaffolding that surrounded the airship where I had seen Helm, I began to call to Ituitud. Ituitud, are you here? I heard nothing. I walked around the great ship and saw a door in the center of the massive body. Again I called, Ituitud! From behind the door I heard a muffled sound. I put my ear to the door and yelled again, Ituitud, are you in there? Faintly from within, Ituitud called out, Please get me out of here. I tried to open the door, but it was massive. I pulled with all my might on the pocket where the door handle hid. I can't open it, I yelled to her through the door. Underneath, I heard. There is a button under the latch. Slide it back. Hurry. Patelin sat at his console, looking extremely pleased with himself. Only a minute to go. Sitting next to him was Helm and Amaziah, both smiling. Amaziah was already celebrating with a sweet roll in one hand and a drink in the other. They each watched as the clock on their monitor ticked closer to launch time. Patelin thought this was the greatest day of his life, and this would aggrandize him to the world. He believed he would not only be the greatest scientist that ever lived, but that this event would open endless doors of opportunity for him. Helm turned to Patelin, who sat to his right. I'm sure Ituitud shall enjoy the ride. Patelin's daydream was interrupted. Hardly paying attention to Helm, he turned to him. What did you say? I said Ituitud would have a great flight. What do you mean? Still not thinking of anything but his triumph. I locked her in the ship. Aren't you pleased? Patelin flew up enraged. You fool! You bungling fool! How dare you jeopardize this project with such a stupid act? Amaziah called over to Patelin. Only 30 seconds. Patelin glared at Helm. What would happen if this was discovered? His dreams of grandeur vanished in his mind. In the streets of Alta, people were singing, dancing, in revelry at the occasion. Suddenly a man who had been dancing stopped. He looked towards the hills. In the distance, a dark, gray cloud of smoke erupted from Mount Alta. As the man continued to watch, he began to see what happened to the red lights flashing near the opening. But it wasn't lights. It was sparks from the volcano bursting forth. Most people were not paying attention to anything other than the launch in themselves. The dome which housed the great fire crystal opened up like two sleepy eyelids. Slowly the blood-red crystal began to vibrate as it was energized. The screen in front of Patelin counted down. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Patelin took in a deep breath and smiled. He hit the button that's propelled this great craft upwards. As he pressed the button, it was as if he had touched another button. Not only did the ship quiver, trying to raise itself past the clouds, but at the same time, Mount Alta exploded, spewing its molten mass down the hillside. When the same man that had been watching it saw what was happening, he tried to alert everyone by screaming, Mount Alta is erupting! At first, only a few would look in that direction. Their focus was on the airship that had not yet reached the clouds above. As more and more diverted their attention towards the mountain, pandemonium took place. People were screaming, babies were crying, animals were running frantically. Perspiration dripped down Patelin as he watched the ship on his monitor. The ship seemed to be hanging in midair. He screamed to Amaziah, Turn up the fire crystal! It's as high as it will go. Patelin got up from his station. It must be higher. He pushed Amaziah from his chair and took over the controls. Imbecile! I'm not going to fail. He turned the control knob to the limit. The fire crystal's beam to the ship was getting redder and redder. The airship was lifted up and lunged through the atmosphere. At that very moment, it exploded, and with its explosion was created another explosion, and that of the airship. Immediately, torrents of water descended on the earth. It was total chaos everywhere. There was no place to escape. The burning rock from Mount Alta was already downing everything in its path. The earth was shaking with quakes, and the sea ravaged the shore with heavens emptying its oceans into terror. Ituitut and I fought our way through the water-drenched streets toward the Hall of Records. We had no idea where we were going to go, but we knew that we had to find Oran and Miram. When we finally reached the door of the Hall of Records, Oran was packing his disc into a silver cylinder and secured it in a gold box. Sigund was helping Oran, but he was not finished. Oran had done the best he could in collecting the records. When he saw the two of us walk in the door, drenched with water, he wasted no time. Quick! There's no time to lose. We must go to the Temple of Sacrifice. Miram and Quetzal await us. I looked behind the crate. Rotog still remained sitting. Esser, we have to go now, Oran reminded me. But what about him? I nodded to Rotog. We have to take him with us, said Ituitut. He'll die if we don't. I could see Rotog's eyes widen at that remark. Okay, I said, helping Rotog stand. I cut his feet free. He felt his hands bound. We left his hands bound. Sigund and I took an arm and we forced him out at the door with us. Oran and Ituitut followed with the records. We ran across the flooded street, cutting through the park to the temple. We could hear screams of terror off in the distance as the molten lava of Mount Alta took the lives of those in its path. We couldn't help them. We could only glance back to see our beautiful city was destroyed. Ituitut's face was not only wet from the rain that poured on us, but from her own tears. She clutched onto Oran. I tried, but I couldn't help it. He kissed her forehead and led her up the steps to the temple. Sigund and I dragged Rotog up the steps, his head turning to see the destruction around us. Quetzal and Miram waited for us. Miram ran up and embraced him. I knew you would make it. Quetzal turned to Ituitut. I'm sorry. Your efforts were in vain. Oran showed him the box. Not completely. We still have the records. I was able to complete one record at least. Ituitut smiled. That's wonderful, Oran. Miram looked at the bound Rotog. Why is he bound? He is of the sons of Belial. He was going to try to stop Ituitut from trying to prevent the launch. He is no threat now. Unbind him. He has a choice to make. Join us or stay with the sons of Belial. In the distance, screams could be heard. Water rushed on the trembling ground. He made the only choice he could when the gag came off. I'll go with you. I don't want to die, he cried. He ran to the door to see the smoke and rain. Please, help me. Of course you are welcome. Please come join us. Rotog walked over to us. Quetzal took Miran's hand. Everyone joined hands. Quetzal touched a stone on his uniform. In a moment, we all left our world, dematerializing and then rematerializing on the Aaron ship, as if someone had undressed and dressed us in the process. We arrived wearing spaceships like Quetzal's. Rotog screamed. Where are we? Quetzal smiled. You are aboard a ship that just sits off from your planet. See? He pointed to a monitor of Alta and one of Terra. You must wear these suits on this ship. When we reach our mothership, you can assume your old guard, Quetzal informed us. Ituitut rushed to the monitors. What is happening to ATLATIA? Quetzal adjusted the screen so they were able to see the scenes of destruction that were happening to our home. It was horrifying. And after seeing the land immersed by water and buildings falling like toys, she could stand no more. I can't watch any more, she sobbed quietly as Oran comforted her. Quetzal could see this was devastating for all of us. We all sat in silence as Miram said a prayer. Even Rotog, who appeared stunned, dumb, joined us in prayer. When Miram finished, Quetzal tried to lift our spirits a little. We shall soon reach our mothership. There you will find many others of the Law of One who were rescued as you were. You shall be our guests until it's time to return to your world and help rebuild it anew. Although we were grateful to be alive and safe, we couldn't forget the screams of the terrified people. It would haunt us forever.